Hi everyone, Michelle here from michellesmidheaven.com, and today I want to spend time with Jupiter and share some initial thoughts because we're almost there. Jupiter is about to move into Leo and will stay there from June 30th until July 26th of next year. I'll talk about Jupiter's shift to a fire element. I also want to address the sign of Leo, which I think is one of those signs that's often misunderstood. And of course, I'm also going to take a look at the ingress chart, where the forming conjunction between Mars and Uranus plays a big role, as Jupiter is going to send them a sextile aspect as soon as he moves into Leo. The beginning of something new, the beginning of Jupiter's new journey, is incredibly significant. The chart of the ingress contains the entire story of what's going to unfold during the year that Jupiter will be traveling through Leo. In that chart, Jupiter is also getting close to making an opposition to Pluto and a trine to Neptune. And all of this while Mercury is stationing retrograde, by the way. Now, you'll probably notice that in this video, I'm especially drawn to Jupiter's sextile to Mars-Uranus and also the opposition to Pluto, because all of that I feel is offering a pretty good flavor of what Jupiter's transit through the sun sign of Leo will be all about. And so I'll be weaving all of that into my interpretations today. But first, I want to mention the fact that the element of fire is going to play a much greater role in the coming year, because now we have both of the slowest moving traditional planets, Saturn and Jupiter, in fire signs. And they're going to remain in a whole sign fire trine for 13 months. And you'll notice that's going to speed up things in general. Fire spreads easily, it's very active and going places quickly. Fire always moves upward, which means it's spiritual. It's oriented toward what is higher. So that's the gods, as well as the people and the concepts higher up in the hierarchy, your higher ideals, and so on. Fire is future oriented because it reaches out to something. When on their best behavior, fire planets automatically imagine new possibilities. They reach out to the truth behind what is happening, and they make judgments so they can take justified action, make use of their willpower to have an impact on the world. And when I talk about power in the divine sense, I mean healthy power, which is simply the capacity to do something in this world, to establish something that is in complete accordance or alignment with a higher purpose or value. The word power is actually derived from the Latin word for ability. That's simply what it is. Fire offers us the ability to do something. In the corrupted sense, of course, it can be about being selfish and controlling and imposing your will on others. But that's, of course, how people's personal choices are turning this gift of fire into something negative. And because Pluto in Aquarius is in an opposition to Jupiter in Leo, we can expect a few power struggles, and we'll be called to be true to our own power and not let anyone dictate us what to do. But let's stick with Jupiter in Leo for a moment. One thing I like to do when a planet changes signs is just take a moment to think of all the things that that planet has in common with its new ruler. Jupiter is now becoming the sun's new guest. So there's a guest-host relationship between Jupiter and the sun. And I take note of what they have in common because those traits will be expressed more easily or more obviously. And the reasoning is that, if something comes natural for both of them, their conversation or cooperation is going to be really smooth for those particular themes. It's exactly like inviting a guest into your house. What you're mostly going to enjoy probably is talking about the things you have in common. That's an easy go-to. So what does Leo's ruler, the sun, and Jupiter, what do they have in common? A few things that come up straight away for me is that both of them are essentially concerned with finding out and deeply knowing, trusting what is good and noble. Jupiter is associated with growth, of course, but take a look outside. What do plants and trees grow toward? The sun, right? The sun offers his guest Jupiter direction, a purpose. The sun gives Jupiter something to grow toward. So this is for all of us, no matter where Leo is in your chart. If you've been feeling a little lost, or if you've been having doubts and it's hard to find fulfillment, the Sun and Jupiter may direct us toward a new ideal. And in particular, they both have a strong sense that life should mean something, that there is a deeper and more joyful meaning, that you've been given certain gifts and talents that need to find their expression through you. With the help of the Sun, with his new guest, Jupiter, they're going to tell us that we are allowed to aspire towards something higher. And fire planets, too, in general, are always looking for more meaning, purpose beyond what is directly visible. So this is going to be highlighted on a greater and smaller scale for us, and Jupiter and Leo will help us grow our ability to spend time doing the things we find worthwhile and spiritually rewarding. Jupiter is reminding us of a higher and often more spiritual goal. So this transit is going to help us act with nobility and healthy entitlement, and I want to get into that a little. It's about using fiery power in the positive sense. And here I'm probably already touching on some of the misunderstandings that people have with Leo, thinking that Leo planets tend to be selfish. And I think that's wrong. And I actually think it says something about how we grew up and so on, and the society we live in. And I'm going to do my best to restore this very unpopular word, entitlement, because it's a concept with a bad reputation as it's been reduced to vanity and ego and so on. But you know what? The dictionary says that entitlement means the right to do or have something. And Jupiter in Leo is letting you know that in your soul's experience as a mortal human being in this lifetime, you are entitled to create things in this world. And more than that, it's actually a moral duty. And Saturn in Aries, from his whole sign trine to Jupiter, helps us remember that obligation to own your power and use it responsibly. So, as human beings, there are things we are entitled to, such as Jupiterian freedom, fairness, justice, and the possibility of a meaningful life, all life-giving Sun-Jupiter things. But the concept of entitlement has, of course, become very negative. As for many people, entitlement now means the belief that you deserve whatever selfish desire you have, and you're demanding privileges without taking any responsibility, without any regard for others. But I've been contemplating that, and it's interesting to me as to why that might happen. When does healthy entitlement turn into ugly, corrupted entitlement? Why are so many people just demanding privileges, demanding to be treated better than others without seemingly making any effort? And by the way, this is also a classic clash between generations, where the older generation always thinks of the next generation that they're not working hard enough and so on. Well, I think this negative entitlement happens as a kind of counteraction, as an overcompensation for something that is lacking. It happens not because people have gotten used to too many privileges, but because they have been beaten down too hard on something else. I think negative entitlement is simply the last straw, an attempt to compensate for the loss of individual solar autonomy. So I'm looking at it right from the perspective of Leo. There is nothing behind the mask of negative entitlement. It's like an empty shell. The light inside, the spark has gone. There's nothing left to express. Negative entitlement is a last desperate attempt, if you will, to restore one's own dignity, one's lost dignity. And I think many people have been taught to live beneath their dignity, whether it's through rigid religious beliefs, like be humble and work hard, Or is the education system, well, you're nobody unless you humbly study your way into debt? Or through your upbringing, right? Many people have been taught to stay small, invisible, stay modest. I mean, if you think about it historically, it's pretty straightforward because it has always been a convenient approach by those in power to oppress people by devaluing people's natural talents and aspirations and actually portraying those aspirations as some kind of arrogance. That was already the case in ancient Greek mythology, actually, where hubris was the greatest mistake man could ever make. I mean, throughout history, common people have been taught to believe this. The peasant should know his place. The worker should be grateful that there even is work. A wife should remain obedient, right? All of those things. And artists, on the other hand, should stop dreaming, of course, because they're not useful. A very anti-solar phrase that I'm sure everybody knows is, who do you think you are? Right? And it may look like a call for modesty, but underneath it, I really think we could see it as an attack on aspiration itself. It's directed to keep you small. It's an attack on people's divine creativity and their natural right to express their gifts. So Leo, as well as the sun in your natal chart, point to those natural gifts. And now Jupiter is going to awaken those gifts and ask you to truly live them. For me personally, I come from many generations of working class folk who've automatically come to interpret any tiny hint of self-respect or creative expression as arrogance. Who do you think you are? You're wasting your time. And modesty and humility can be nice, but not when they're demanded by some force outside of you. Not when it's a rule, because then it's simply a demand to submit yourself to pretending you're less than you are. And although it's completely inauthentic, chances are that you eventually start believing it. Because if you have been beaten down so much that you no longer believe you're entitled to anything at all, you stop trusting yourself. You forget about that divine spark within. You forget about your talents and you stop believing you deserve basic respect, autonomy, and purpose. So again, Jupiter in Leo is here to remind you that you're not just a meat bag, only here to obey others and then die. If you forgot yourself, erased yourself, or you learn to mistrust your own worth, you're not being nice, humble, and modest at all. Jupiter will let you know you're being ignorant and you're giving your divine power away as if it's nothing. That's very disrespectful in itself. Jupiter's healthy entitlement says, okay, nobody owes me anything, but I do have dignity and I am allowed to want a life that reflects that dignity. I think the Ingress chart says it all, where as soon as Jupiter enters Leo, he immediately connects with a very rebellious Mars-Uranus conjunction. They're not going to take it. This is where your soul is rebelling against any form of submission or anything you're kneeling for, even without knowing it, even without being aware of it. Mars and Uranus instinctively want to break with the past, and their connection to Jupiter indicates that we can allow healthy Leo pride into our experience almost as a form of survival. In Leo, Jupiter lets you tap into what I would call your inner aristocracy. We all have it in the sense of the old ideal of aristocracy at its very best. I'm talking about the divine ideal, genuine Jupiterian nobility in the best format, so to speak, is not supposed to be only about privilege. It implies obligation, courage, generosity, stewardship, and self-mastery. A true king bears the weight of the realm. From a whole sign trine aspect, Saturn in Aries in a dominant position here reminds Jupiter of that Shakespearean phrase, uneasy lies the head that wears a crown. The crown is both a privilege and a burden. And in the noblest sense, planets in Leo are not about wanting to be in the spotlight or wanting superiority over others. It is about finding your divine spark inside, that understands that life is precious and that because of this, you cannot be satisfied with mediocrity or consent to humiliation and meaninglessness. Healthy entitlement is remembering your birthright to seek a meaningful life and live it in all spontaneity. That is the passionate aspiration that Jupiter and Leo will try to bring into our awareness. And that brings me to what you'll hear some people say about any transit, really. Oh, I thought I would notice this transit more, or I thought this or that transit would be more helpful. I think it's important that we first listen very carefully to what kind of messages the planets bring. Carefully observe the clues the cosmos is giving you. Jupiter especially requires your openness and receptivity in order to give you the opportunities that will help you move forward. The Ingress chart holds an older Jupiter this time as he's about to disappear under the beams of the sun, ending his cycle in relation to the sun. An old Jupiter is no longer naive, is no longer generous to everyone without discrimination. This old Jupiter is no longer assuming that Jupiterian institutions such as governments or schools or religious authorities will protect us or tell us how to live morally. It's over. By now, you know what kind of ideas you're holding on to that are actually inauthentic. They're just not true. Some of you may even experience belief fatigue. Maybe you're having a harder time getting behind any type of rules or ideology. There is an impatience in the air to get rid of any last obstacles on Jupiter's path to freedom. And on July 29th, Jupiter will be Cazimi. The Sun conjoins Jupiter and the new cycle starts. And this is when Jupiter will have let go of certain conditioning beliefs that have harmed you in the past in some way. And definitely in Leo, Jupiter will use his freedom to establish his own rules, new rules. And what is Jupiterian freedom? I think it starts with the feeling of falling in love with life again and suddenly realizing how much more there is to experience. Jupiter Cazimi, or his new cycle with the sun, is going to awaken a hunger, I think, a hunger for meaning, a wild, fiery hunger for joy, courage, creativity, and the kind of life that feels worthy of the sacredness of being alive. And only if you know there is something sacred within you will you be able to see that there is something sacred in other people as well. And I cannot stress enough how important that is, even if it sounds trivial. Both the Sun and Jupiter are unifying powers. And if you engage with the game of divisiveness, Jupiter in Leo is letting you know that you forgot about your own spark. Look at yourself first. It's not selfish. Looking at yourself is going to heal others. The question that we can ask in the Sun's domain is going to sound so cliche, and yet it's the most important question we can ask in the short time we spend here. The question is, what am I going to do with the life I have been given? So the core message of Jupiter in Leo is get off your knees, stand upright, claim your dignity for yourself, and live as though every single minute is precious, because it is. And if you want some personal guidance on how to navigate Jupiter's important transit, on how to discover or rediscover a higher sense of purpose, get in touch with me through michelsmidheaven.com. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. It really helps me out. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.